one.
Hi, this is Paul Friesen and Scott Billeck of the Winnipeg Sun, and welcome to Jet Setting on after day one of Winnipeg Jets Training Camp 2022 camp bonus, I guess we could call it. Scott Billeck, what were your any impressions? Did anything stand out from you from day one?
Yeah, I mean, you're always hesitant to kind of look into a day one of camp and make too many judgments, but it's different this year because it's been 8 years since there's been a new kind of head coach come into town and kind of revamp the way the Jets are playing. And I thought we saw that it was evident on day one with Rick Bowness in camp bonus, as you put it. It was pace. There's a lot of pace to that practice. Rick Bowness was out there barking at times, slamming his stick against the boards, and he wanted his guys going, and he wanted them going right off the bat. They worked a little bit on neutral zone stuff this year. They're going to get into defensive stuff tomorrow and offensive zone stuff on Saturday, Rick said. But it just looked like guys were. It was almost like there was an optimism that it was a bit palpable, right? I guess this is the case when even you have a new boss at work or something like that. Like that, it's almost like a clean slate, a fresh start, that sort of thing. And
Not
that's
that Paul Maurice wouldn't have been. Not that Paul Maurice wouldn't have been barking and slamming a stick, right?
Yeah, no, he did that at times, but just like this is a new message. It's a new system. Everybody, there's new coaches. I mean, they got Brad Lower and Scott O'Neill out there too.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of changes out there, and a lot of guys kind of, I guess with peak years, right? I think there's a lot of room for opportunity, especially for the younger players this year, to grab hold of spots. I mean, Rick Bowness said this afternoon when we chatted with him. It's wide open and it's all up for grabs right now. And I thought that was kind of what showed a little bit today. There are players, everybody from, your top prospect to your guys that are, even the guys that are just signed to AHL contracts. Guys are looking to try and make an impression on this new head coaching, this coaching regime. And, I think it showed on day one of camp.
Anything about line combinations strike you, or is it way too soon to talk about those?
No, because I think in the first two, you got both your groups were interesting because you kind of have all your lines in those first two groups. You saw Kyle Connor with Mark Scheifele and not Cole Perfetti, Nikolai Ehlers, and then you saw Cole Perfetti with Pierre-Luc Dubois and Blake Wheeler. So you saw kind of those. That's kind of what your top six are most likely going to look like. And then you saw also out there your third line, which you're likely going to be Jansen Harkins, Adam Lowry, and Mason Appleton. Now there's room there. Perhaps Morgan Barron, who's injured right now, he's probably gonna miss a few days, Rick Bowness said, or Kevin Cheveldayoff actually said that when he spoke. But and then in the fourth line you have Sam Gagner, David Gustafsson, which is one of the things that a lot of people have been kind of clamoring for over the last couple of years, to get David Gustafsson more in there. He's already the fourth line center, if you're looking at it like that. And then you have Dominic Toninato as well there. So you kind of saw on forwards what the top kind of 12 guys are going to look like, most likely. Sure. It was on defense, though, where the pairings were all over the place. There was
let's get it out of the way.
Yeah.
Let's get it out of the way. Who's Billy playing with?
Well, that's the thing. I don't know yet. And so, I mean, it's just as much as Ville Heinola and Dylan Sandberg want to make their mark. Logan Stanley was out there today, too, wanting to make his mark. He ended up actually toe dragging Mark Scheifele and then putting a backhand through the 5-hole on Connor Hellebuyck during the first session of the day. So Logan Stanley wants to make his mark. Well, that's the thing. Like, I mean, this is the thing. All these guys are trying to make an impression, as I said earlier. So, it's tough to glean on the back end, though, right now. Rick Bowness said later in the day that he was trying to put a veteran with a younger guy. So those pairings aren't really set yet. Probably won't be until, early next week when he kind of starts clamping down on the roster, cutting some guys, that sort of thing. But, I think the biggest thing, if I was to take away something from this day, was the excitement on Mark Scheifele's face. You were in the room during the thing. He said excited about 60,000 times. I have a bit of a theory on Mark Scheifele. It's been a tough couple of years for him. I'm not trying to make excuses for the guy, but I think he lost his kind of voice in that room, perhaps under Paul Maurice. He kind of lost his motivation for the game. I think you saw that back today. I'm hesitant after one day to kind of make a proclamation like that. But at the same time, like Mark Scheifele looked like he was back in terms of the way that, this is Mr. Hockey. This is the guy that, likes to talk the game, and he's really happy to be out there, even in practice and all those. And it seemed like Mark Scheifele, he said himself, he almost has a fresh slate of himself. And this is a new beginning, or just a fresh start for him. I thought that stood out to me, and I'll be writing about that later today. I thought that stood out to me a little bit more than anything, because if you've got one guy that wants to maybe take this captaincy, if they're going to give it out this year at some point, I think if you're Mark Scheifele, I mean, if I know Mark Scheifele, and I don't know him personally, but I know him enough that I've seen him the last, 8-9 years or whatever around here, he's very much, I think he would like to wear the C.
Really?
And I think he is the type of guy that would take that. And I don't. So
if he's going to want to wear, if he wants to wear the C, he has to play both ends of the rink.
And I think Rick Bowness is getting that.
Getting worse. He seemed to be getting worse at that. Full disclosure here, I thought Mark Scheifele looked like a guy who should be traded by the end of last season, and I wrote that. They didn't do that, of course. So now he has to become a complete two-way player to get in Rick Bowness's good graces, because I'm sure Paul Maurice got tired of trying to get it out of him. Yeah,
and I agree with you. I just think that Paul Maurice and Mark Scheifele may have gotten just too tired of each other, right? And and this is life. I mean, I think sometimes we have to step back and just look at the human angle, and sometimes, a coach and a player just kind of lose whatever relationship they have. And I don't think it was working for Mark Scheifele and Paul Maurice anymore. And especially when Dave Lowry came in, there was a disconnect there. It just wasn't working. Mark Scheifele said he was confused about it. There's other players that have kind of been uncertain about what the direction was of the team last year. I think the team was kind of taken aback last year about what happened, Paul Maurice leaving abruptly in December.
Oh, sure.
That's not normal. So I'm interested to see. Am I optimistic about Mark Scheifele turning his defensive game around? I need to see more, of course. But at the same time, a new voice, a guy that might speak to Mark Scheifele a little bit better, and Rick Bowness. Maybe that's just where it is. And sometimes that's all it is. Some guys just don't mesh with their head coaches, or a head coach just goes stale on a guy. So it'd be interesting to see, but that's kind of what I took away from, day one, at least.
But the good news is that that becoming a better defensive player is a decision, and it's hard work. It's not a gift you're born with. So they can teach it to him if he's willing to learn it. I mean,
yeah, and I think we've seen Mark Scheifele play defense in the past. It's just been a long time since he's done it, and so we kind of forget the fact that he actually can be a two-way center. And we've gotten to a point where that hasn't really been the case for a few years. And so if he gets back to it, Rick Bowness can be the Mark Scheifele whisperer. I mean, all the power to Rick Bowness. I mean, and that'll be better for the team in the end. But again, I think I saw Mike Scheifele today, who was coming in some years and being excited and all that, and said the right things. But this year, I don't think he could really hide the excitement. Like, it wasn't like he was trying to fake it or anything. It was there for him. And I'm interested to see how this keeps going as camp progresses and the systems come in, and what Rick Bowness asks for him to do. But we'll get there. One thing I want to ask you, I mean, you were in there for Kevin Cheveldayoff. He's obviously been under fire, on the hot seat, all that kind of stuff. What did you think about his press conference today? And did anything kind of stand out to you from it?
Well, you're talking about the Jets GM, of course. And there's one thing that kind of jumped out at me, and I'm just kind of writing my column for tomorrow's paper off of it. And that is that he said at the end of last season, there were all these emotions running high, and he heard from a lot of players and representatives. I'm assuming that means agents. And they were all wanting to know what the future of this team is. And it struck me, boy, when your players and your leading players, veterans, are questioning your team's future, what does that say about how far things have kind of fallen here? And so I asked him that, and his response was, "It tells me they care." Okay, I think it goes a little beyond that too, though. So I'll work through a column on that. And the other thing that he said was, in response to my question about with so few changes, why is there a reason for optimism? And he called the changes they have made seismic changes. Right. And he's referring to Rick Bowness, which, so in full circle here, we've gone back to, that's the hope that this organization brass is hanging its hat on, is that the new voice of Rick Bowness even though he wasn't their first choice, we've forgotten that kind of quickly,
Yeah.
is supposed to be the difference this year. Perhaps some players with chips on their shoulder like Scheifele as well.
Yeah.
Is what is the change everybody's hoping makes a difference. I don't know. It's a bit of a thin thread to be hanging from, if you ask me. But I've seen teams pull up the us versus the world routine and go a ways on it. So and maybe Bowness is more of a hard ass than I think he is. So I guess those are my takeaways.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of same thing. I mean, a lot of this with Kevin Cheveldayoff at this point is, it's time to prove it, right? I mean, you've had 11 years now. You're going into your 12th year as a GM of this team. Yeah, you do have a fresh slate with not a fresh slate, but an extended slate of 3 years. But you got to win now. I mean, there are contracts. He was asked about that again today. He doesn't want to look into the future too much, but in 2 years, there's a lot of contracts up on this team, and a lot of good players could be not in Winnipeg anymore. So the
GM's got to look in the future.
He does, 100%, but I don't think if he looks into the future in 2 years and this team hasn't gone anywhere, I don't think he sees himself in that future. And why would you at that point? I mean, arguably he might already not seen himself this far, given the little bit of success that this team has had, and now we're on year 5 away from that at this point.
Let's not forget he's working with a contract extension signed at the end of last season, right? And I still think there's heat on him though, from the public, if not from his owner.
Yeah, I agree with you. 100%. So yeah.
All right. Well, that's probably a good place to wrap it up. Day one at Jets camp was certainly not bursting with news, but plenty to talk about still. For Scott Billeck and for the rest of the Winnipeg Sun, I'm Paul Friesen. Thanks for watching.